Welcome to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Stuckrath, dietary needs expert, certified meetings manager, certified food protection manager. I have searched the globe to find people and businesses who are creating safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences for their employees, guests, and communities. In each episode, you will find authentic conversations about how food and beverage impacts inclusion, sustainability, culture, community, health, and wellness. I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to cover it all. Are you ready to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line? If so, let's go. And on today's episode, I'm so excited to have my longtime, more than 20-year friend, Tanya Gurrieri, on the show with me. She is a caterer out of Charleston, South Carolina, but we met in Atlanta. And she's been a caterer ever since then, and for longer than that, I'm sure. We've kept in touch recently on social media, and when she moved to Charleston 16 years ago, she started several successful catering companies for other people before launching Salthouse Catering for herself in 2013. So congratulations on that, Tanya. 8 years.
Thank you. I know.
That's awesome. So when I reached out to you to talk about this, we actually talked about an article that we did Meetings Today, and I'll share that link with everybody as well, but on the food of Carolinas, of the coastal Carolinas specifically. But when we were talking about food safety and food quality, especially in light of COVID, and which is why I termed this whole session on there is no compromise on food safety and on food quality. So can we talk about that first?
Sure. Thank you for having me. First of all, Tracy, it's great to reconnect with you in a different way 25 plus years later from our time in Atlanta. Charleston's my home, and so I always knew I'd come back here. And after starting several catering companies for other people, I realized it was time to do it for myself. So I have an executive chef business partner, and he manages clearly the culinary side of things. I manage more the sales and marketing side, and together we manage the operations side. So, a lot of our practices come from my time in Atlanta working for Bold American, which is one of the premier catering companies in the Southeast. And they taught me a lot of what I know. And then Charleston's a different market for sure. We're mostly social driven. We don't have the corporate business here necessarily, a lot of leisure travel, tons of destination weddings. And so that is where the thrust of our business really comes from. Todd, my business partner and chef, is a restaurant trained, classically trained, Johnson & Wales graduate. And as such, there was a learning curve for catering. Yeah. And we know it's different city to city. I've read Hot Box by the Lee brothers recently that talks about, their challenges of getting in these New York buildings and no cooking equipment. And, every city is different. In Charleston, we're working a lot in the middle of a field at, an old historic site, beautiful beachfront properties, historic buildings. And so in most of those scenarios, there's not a kitchen, but planners and caterers here have become accustomed to building out a mobile kitchen. So we're working in a tent with a rented oven, with our sous vide machines, with maybe some toaster ovens, sometimes a generator. And we're really trying to recreate restaurant quality food in the catered environment. People come to Charleston with really high expectations for that cuisine. And so it's our job to deliver in the middle of a field under a tent. So just recently, I think the reason that not compromising came up was I've been doing some site visits. We're a little slower in January, so we've been visiting some new venues. And at several of the venues that don't have kitchens, their comment to me was, most caterers just bring the food hot. And I cringe and, grab my heart, because to me, that is compromising. We would never leave from our kitchen with food in a hot box and go to an event and serve it hours later. I feel like it's compromising quality and food safety, and we're just not willing to do that. So we start our food at our kitchen, whether it's, marking it on the grill, searing the fish, and then putting it in a sous vide bag, transporting it at the proper temperature, and then finishing it on site. It requires that equipment. It requires that power. It requires chefs who know what temperature things should be brought to. But we are just not willing to cut corners and travel with hot food. We're going to finish it on site no matter what the situation.
Well, and that brings up, last summer when COVID hit, I talked about food safety quite a bit. And people forget that we've always trusted you as a caterer to provide that food safety. And when COVID hit, everybody's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Well, COVID's not transmitted through food and beverage. It hasn't been proven to be, but we still have E. coli and salmonella and all the other bacteria that I can't pronounce, but that we have to worry about. And that's what you all are focused on. And when we really talk about food, not that you're not focused on COVID, but you're focused on making sure that bacteria doesn't get into the food and beverage.
That's right. And, probing temps and thermometers on site. But we did make some adjustments in light of COVID. And we have found that, not all caterers have. And, what we did was basically take the utensils out of the guests' hands. The minute we started executing events, not only were we doing a lot of individually packed things, boxes, charcuterie cones, no more displays, no more self-service beverage stations, no more self-service buffets. We really took the utensils out of the guest hands and are still doing that likely into summer or beyond. We'll see. So luckily we were able to take those menus that were already written and just tweak them a little bit. A served buffet or a chef prepared small plate handed to you as opposed to any form of self-service, even desserts. We're passing desserts. We put small plates or bamboo boats or sticks in everything so that nobody's touching the food, even if we're passing it. And of course, heightened sanitation, whether it's hand wash stations, a sanitation person dedicated at each event to wiping down tables, trays, anything that anybody's touching, which, we hate to see the waste of plastics and bamboo for everything, but it's the way we've been able to adjust and still keep serving our clients. Masked servers, gloved servers. And I know we're going to get to this, but the guests don't care. They're there, they're drinking, they're having a good time, they're eating. So our protocol all along has been protect our people, keep our people safe, keep our people working. And the guests are going to do what they're going to do, particularly in private venues or private homes where you just can't tell them what to do. Right. So it's definitely, it's changed the way we present the food, but not our mindset for quality and safety overall.
And that's super important. And, in the comment you made about the customers are going to do what they want to do, to me, as long as you're adhering to and you've explained to them your policies and procedures and how you're going to do it, and these are your safety protocols, again, they're going to do what they're going to do. And there's been some articles recently that are bashing our industry, but we're good at what we do. And you're the ones choosing to behave differently. And we shouldn't be penalized or hurt because of, trying to do the right thing in the right way and following the law that we have and that we've been given and presented. And so it does become challenging for everybody.
Yeah, nobody wants to read my 12-page COVID manual of all the things we're doing, all the things we're asking you to do, but we do send it and we do ask them to sign off and acknowledge that they read it and accept responsibility for their guest. It's sort of a mutual release that, you can't hold us liable if somebody gets sick because of our server. Right. But we do ask for transparency. We're asking people to communicate if somebody's been exposed. And So far it's worked. We've had no cases in our management team. And if somebody on our hourly staff was exposed, they're certainly not working for a couple of weeks until we can see that they're totally negative. But we were surprised a little bit with the cavalier attitude of guests in a setting, and just had to protect ourselves and do what we could do to keep everybody safe and healthy and working.
Well, that's good. And you have a business to run, and and the safety of your employees. So one of the questions that I always ask my guests is, what does a safe, inclusive, and sustainable food and beverage experience look like to you? And you can think before COVID, but also during COVID, what does that mean?
I would say the safety of it, as I explained, has changed just a little bit with the presentation or the style of service. But really, I feel like all along and even now, our inclusiveness and our sustainability haven't really changed. We participate in a local sustainable seafood initiative where we're only serving fish or seafood that's readily available in any given month. We don't let people know what kind of fish they're having until we get it off the boat. We're supporting local farmers. We're telling people in our menu, if we know where an ingredient's coming from, it's listed. Heirloom grains and rices, we're supporting the continuation of that production by buying their product and sharing it with people. So sustainability hasn't changed a whole lot for us. Inclusiveness, I think, has become more important. The focus has become greater on what's vegetarian, what's vegan, what's gluten-free, what's dairy-free. Can you do a totally vegan menu? We just brought on a gluten-free vegan baker to offer more dessert options, which is really exciting.
I love that.
It's been fruit plates for everyone until now, and she's got really beautiful creamy cheesecakes and chocolate cookies, and she's making her own flour. And so partnering up with people who can help us with that mission has been important. And I know I mentioned to you that we've got a giant catering menu starting, from past hors d'oeuvres, dinner buffets, plated dinners, hors d'oeuvre stations, and chef goes line by line and marks what's gluten-free, vegan, or vegetarian, so that we're putting the power of those choices in the client's hands. They can see it in front of them and choose those items. And then certain things we can modify. We tell the brides or grooms to choose the menu you love, and then let us take care of those dietary needs as they show themselves, which they will. So say we've got, tuna in a wonton cup. Well, we've got rice crackers for the gluten-free folks, or a little Asian spoon that we can put it in and leave the toast out. And so, everybody here is very open to meeting those needs and making sure everybody feels included and full and happy and well served.
And that's so important. And even with weddings, I mean, there was a post years ago by one of our industry friends, and he's like, the bride put it on their wedding thing and said, please answer these questions. And it was very odd allergies on the back, probably because of hers or her husband's, but everybody went crazy on it, going, why do we have to do this? And I'm like, these are the people you're inviting to your wedding. You don't want to kill them at your wedding. By serving them something that they can't eat, right? Or saying, hey, just stay at home, right?
And even the menu signs on the station are going to note that, so that even if somebody didn't go to that extreme to ask and solicit, I usually tell people don't ask, because it can be a can of worms. Then you hear about everybody's aversions instead of their true allergies. But real allergies are going to let you know. They're going to seek you out. They're going to ask the questions. We equip our servers with the basic food knowledge of what's in this. If somebody asks, and if they don't know, they can go back to the kitchen. So it's important. We don't want to hurt anybody. We want everybody to get plenty to eat. And, we're willing to take the steps to make sure everybody feels good.
Well, and I love the fact that you're training your servers, because that's one of the biggest challenges when you're eating at an event with an allergy or any dietary need, because the servers majority of the time look at you like deer in the headlights. And And my friend Jim, he's like, I'm vegan. And they brought the server, and this is at a convention center. The server brought the food, and she's like, would you like scallops with that? And
No.
no, I mean, it's our favorite story to tell, but it's educating the servers, because to me, they're your front-facing salespeople at the time of the event.
Yep. It's important. And like we say, don't answer a question you don't know the answer to. Come find out, come find somebody, and we'll take care of them. So it's, one of the pandemic struggles has been a turnover, people changing careers and getting out of food and beverage. So we're constantly training and talking about those things.
That's awesome. So based on COVID and what's been going on, it's kind of, what is the silver lining behind this? Do you see a silver lining behind the pandemic?
Well, we have to stay positive. And so, yes, I have had to find some silver linings, and charcuterie cones are my big silver lining. We took this big, beautiful display and put it in a bamboo cone, and people love it. And so it's never going to go away. We're always going to have charcuterie cones now, or jarcuterie, if you've seen some of those.
I've seen some of those. Yep.
That's probably the one menu modification that I think is really cool, that we'll probably continue doing. But in the bigger scheme of things, it just allowed people to reset. It weeded out some people that were probably burned out in the industry. It allowed them the chance to say, I'm done with food and beverage. I'm going to go sell plantation shutters or whatever I'm going to do. And while change is hard and you hate to lose people, no better time than during furloughs and cutbacks for somebody to decide they don't want to be on your payroll anymore. So we lost a couple salaried managers. Of course, we furloughed all of our hourly during the time where we had no event, but it allowed us to sort of do some things we might not have done, which is launching an online ordering platform. Now, within 48 hours, you can order an individual meal. In response to the restaurants all offering this, we felt like we could do it too, where before you'd have to have a party of 200 with a month's notice to hire me. Now you can have crab cakes at home in 2 days, delivered contact free. So that online ordering platform is something we would have never done. We developed menus that were more individual, smaller groups that we knew people were having at homes, special occasion menus like Thanksgiving and Christmas and Valentine's that we would have never done before. And now those things are in place, and they won't go away even when we get back to business. So I'm happy about that. I think it allowed us to feel okay about paring down a little bit, revisiting our menus, cutting the fat, whether it was product availability or pricing. Some things just had to go, and it just feels a little, leaner and meaner. We're pared down to the winners, and we don't have to be everything to everybody. We don't have to have everything on our menu. And I think restaurants led the charge in that a little bit.
Yeah.
So the refocus, the paring down, I think it's all going to end up being good.
That's good. So how, when a planner calls you, or an event host calls you, or any caterer, what kind of questions do you think they should be asking, or you want them to ask of you to ensure a great event, catered event, especially off premise, because that's what you do?
Well, I think that so many people just don't know what goes into serving 200 people in the middle of a field that it's okay. I don't have to educate them about everything. They just have to have the trust based on my reputation, my experience, my reviews, our time in business, that we are doing the right things to execute really smooth, successful events. I ask a lot of questions that then prompt them to think about things they might not think about. What style of food service fits best in the space you provided? Is there room for full seating for everyone? Well, if not, maybe we shouldn't do a seated dinner. Helping them make good decisions based on the environment they're in. And I always use the story when the Ravenel Bridge here, the big bridge, opened. We did an opening party, and the winds were blowing. You're on top of a bridge. And we did a sushi display. And as my chefs were displaying the sushi, I was like, you guys can thank me now, because those guys over there, their Schaefer won't stay lit. Their sternos are blowing out. Like, we try to be very mindful of the environment we're in and design a menu that makes sense there. The season.
Yeah.
If it's summertime, I don't want to serve you, it's going to be hot as the sun anyway. Let me present more cool things. So it's my job as the professional to really guide those decisions, and give the planner or the host confidence that, these are all for a reason. I tell them I'm not a no person, but when you want to serve ice cream on the surface of the sun, I'm probably going to try and suggest something else. So there's always just and I feel like us more than a lot of other caterers, because of our commitment to quality and safety, that, some people say yes to things we wouldn't say yes to because they're just not feasible.
Well, and I was having that conversation with my friend Mark, who is an engineer, and he's like, the salespeople go out and sell something and then come back and, you have to make it. And, it's kind of that same predicament or that same situation, whereas somebody sells something or they have this idea in their mind because they saw it on TV or a magazine, but depending on where you are and you pick this fabulous venue, but hey, there's no kitchen, there's no place to set up a kitchen. Those are the things that you don't necessarily think about if you're not in the industry of planning events.
That's right. And hopefully people, with just that conversation of it's going to be 100 degrees, maybe, the ice cream cones aren't a good idea. And while nobody likes to be told no, I think people do appreciate our knowledge of the environment and making suggestions that are appropriate.
Yeah. And your area, your city, and what works in a variety of different places. So, and I'm glad that you're going out and looking at new venues too, so that you have more options than just the standard, because I think that's going to be important, during COVID as well as post-COVID, because we have to be outside more. We have to have larger spaces to fit the distance, social distancing. I like physical distancing better. Physical distancing of people in those spaces. And if you've booked such and such church or, venue, you're going to have to scale back your number of people, or you're going to have to find a different scenario.
Yeah. And we see those venue people that oversell, that tell you can put more people in a space than you can, for the sake of making a sale. And as a small company, we will never sell our kitchen or our ops division up the river and have them try and execute something that's not feasible.
So and kind of going back to that same question, what are questions that you like to get from hosts and planners about your services?
That's a great question. I love for people to ask, where the food's coming from, where we're sourcing it, where's the local shrimp coming from, where is that cucumber coming from. I like for people to care about where the food comes from. Not everybody does. Not many people ask, what is a challenge you had in that venue, or what is an opportunity this venue presents? But one of my first questions when I'm fielding a call is, where is your venue? Because it will matter what we talk about. When is your event? What number of guests?
Budget.
The budget is important. Most people are very price driven, but don't have a budget in mind.
Right.
So budgets, that's why I like corporate planners. They always know what the budget is. We don't get enough of them down here. I want people, we say a lot, I want people to trust me as the professional. Mm-hmm. Kid, we're like, oh, why would they listen to me? Why would they take my advice? What do I know? But if they'll just let us be a good partner in the end, we're all in it for a smooth, successful event. It's those people that, don't listen to anything you say. And, why would you listen to me? What do I know after 20 years in the business?
Right. So on that note, what's a situation that somebody didn't listen to you and it was almost a disaster and you were able to flip it around? Besides the sushi, I love the sushi thing, which is kind of appropriate that you did it on the top of a bridge.
Right. What's at the top of my mind right now, and again, because we have so many destination brides coming in, people eat and recept differently all over the country. I think in a lot of states, maybe the Northeast comes to mind, all these hotel ballrooms. Literally, they can do anything. They're equipped to really do anything. So an advanced choice of entree is something that we try to talk people out of. Anybody who's listening, that's when you ask your guest via, an insert in the invitation, chicken, beef, or veg. They return it. In order for me in the middle of a field to make that happen, there's so many pieces I need. I need a seating chart telling me who's sitting where and eating what, how many beef and chicken go to this table. I need a little coded place card that's got a star on it for my fish people, so I magically know that they ordered fish 3 months ago. And as much as we try and talk people out of it, and as many charges, I need extra people, I need extra this, I need extra that. Some people just want to do it. We've had people change seats, put their place cards in their pockets, move tables, and service is just sort of a big train wreck. And it takes longer and people don't get what they wanted. And my servers are, auctioning off food. So that is historical, that no matter how many times I tell somebody it's not a good idea, when service goes south, I sit there and say, this is why. And then the other quick one is people who want to provide their own alcohol for the bar. And I always tell them, it's not that much of a savings. It's so much schlepping. You're not going to realize how much product it is. Invariably, they run out in the first 30 minutes of something. And I have to go to them and say, can you send your groomsmen to the grocery and get some more beer? But it's just, again, why would they listen to me that it's really not a good idea to do those things?
Right. Well, and schlepping your own liquor is a lot harder than you think it is, and buying it. And there are calculations behind that and figuring it out. And so we were talking about this before we got on today, the behind the scenes that we do as event professionals, caterers, lighting people, AV people. I mean, we're so good at hiding ourselves and what our expertise is that it hinders us in a way that people don't really know this is what we're so talented at, and we can pull off I love saying this all the time. We can pull bigger rabbits out of smaller hats every single time.
It's true. And, the manpower and the labor and the hours that go into showing up and executing a successful event, it's just mind blowing.
Yeah.
And people wonder why there's a 20% service charge. Well, that barely covers all the time I spent talking about your event.
Right. Yeah. And when I remember doing the St. Simon's Food and Spirits Festival back in 2012 and, finding a source of water for our food and beverage people on there, we had to take it from the building, the small building that was actually not officially on the property. And we had to get permission from that and getting those permits. And because we have to, as food service professionals, we have to have running water there so that we can make sure of food safety,
and power, I'm always amazed that people don't care where the power is. I need some power. And is there enough power? And is that circuit dedicated for my oven, or am I going to be blowing circuits and your lights are going out and your band is turning off? So it is a lot. It's mind boggling for people. And, that's why they hire professionals. They don't have to know everything that goes into it, but caterers, especially off-premise caterers, represent a huge segment of our food and beverage industry. And I agree that we are sort of the silent segment. And I hope that, and I've said it on every survey I've been sent about the pandemic and how it's affected me, that, we're not restaurants. We don't need to be lumped in with restaurants.
Right.
Caterers need their own voice in the food and beverage industry.
There's on the new app Clubhouse, I think there's a group or a club in there that is Chefs Without Restaurants. And I think it's really important to highlight that aspect, because you think that a restaurant or chef is a chef because of the restaurant that they have and they're on, national television or whatever, because they've done this. But there are so many chefs out there that are in catering, they're in hotels, they're line cooks, they're in pastry, those are all chefs. And they, or they're doing personal chefing for people. Right. And going to people's houses, and they have a kitchen somewhere else. And there are so many more chefs and cooks out there that we don't even think about unless they have, a restaurant like Tyler Florence or, whatever. And it's unfortunate.
You're right. I mean, people say to me all the time, "Oh, do you have a restaurant?" I'm like, "No, we just do catering." And then I stop myself. I'm like, I mean, we don't just do catering. Catering is enough. It's actually enough.
Yeah.
And, we need a voice and a seat at the table. And I've been hashtagging Save Catering all of pandemic.
Love that hashtag. Yeah.
And there's been a pretty good national push for it. As independent restaurants are making their voice heard. I just feel like caterers need to be included in that conversation. Hi, Lisa.
Yes, I 100% agree. Caterers need to be part of that conversation. And they don't realize that, we were talking before we got on too, is that this big Arizona vaccination site that's doing 24-hour vaccinations, they're feeding their volunteers breakfast and lunch. And, some people were talking about who's getting paid or whatever. I'm like, I want to know, this is kind of going back to, dietary needs as well, but who's that caterer that's providing that food and beverage? There is a caterer, there is a Tanya there doing that. But are you letting me know beforehand that you've got a vegan option or you've got a gluten-free option? Because if I'm going to be there for 8 hours and you promise me to feed me, what are you going to feed me? And those are those questions that you have to come up with and think about.
And if the client or planner doesn't ask, it's my job to make sure.
Right.
We're delivering box meals to mass vac sites as well this week for local hospital, and clearly marked boxes of what's in them, individually packed so that everybody's got a place.
That's awesome. And I know, and I don't know if you know this, but in the EU, all unpackaged food, so food from a caterer, it is by law that you have to label it for their top 14 allergens. And so here in the US, we don't have that law. It's only on prepackaged food. So the fact that you're taking the extra effort to do that on your packaged food, I commend you for. And the people who have dietary needs, thank you for that. So, because there's one young girl ate a baguette from a restaurant in an airport, and it wasn't labeled with sesame in it. And on the airplane, she went into anaphylactic shock and she ended up dying. But that law has changed. And I think we don't want that to happen at our events, no matter if it's a vaccination site or a wedding or anything like that. So thank you for doing that.
Our pleasure. We're here to adapt and, change as things change. And it's become more important to highlight and identify all those catering specific allergies.
Okay, so 2 more questions. And we may have covered this a little bit, but what is one thing that you wish would come from the pandemic?
As I said before, a little bit of recognition that catering is a powerhouse industry and that we're important in the food service circle of life, and that we have better representation with our lawmakers. It's just... there's always a spot for a restaurant, but there's not always a spot for a caterer in a box to be checked. So I want caterers to continue to be represented and show ourselves. I hope that that people are a little kinder and, just I've heard a lot of meeting people where they are. Everybody's COVID reactions are different. And so if you're very fearful, I have to understand that. If you're less fearful, I have to meet you there too. So meeting people where they are, and valuing that person for wherever they are, whether it's my employee, a guest, just a little more empathy and taking the time to make sure that we're hearing how people feel.
That's awesome, because you're going to have everybody from all forms of life and thought processes coming to your events and to your workplace. And so understanding where they're coming from is really, really important.
Yeah.
So one of the last question that I always ask everybody is, what is your favorite food and beverage? But I also want to ask, what is your favorite thing on your menu that you guys have put together?
So many good choices. I love our braised short rib. I think, you see short rib on a lot of menus. Ours is so good that I never understand why people don't love it. But then I've tried a few that weren't so good, and maybe I understand why people don't love it. So give short rib a chance. And then I mentioned this, I don't want to, seem like an alcoholic on this video, but I love cat head vodka. I'm like their feet on the ground. I'm their outside salesperson. Anytime I'm having a cocktail, I want to tell people that it's cat head honeysuckle with soda water and a little ginger beer, and it's the best cocktail ever. So those are my answers.
That's good. That's awesome. No harm in brag about what you like. So that's a good thing. And I can't wait to taste your vegan and gluten-free desserts that you've got on. Yes. Now, actually, one question on that. Is she doing that inside your kitchen, or does she have a separate kitchen that she's doing that?
She's got her own facility. Our kitchen isn't cool enough to make pastries in. Temperature-wise, like the air condition just doesn't stay cool enough in the summertime to be a good pastry kitchen. So we source out both our regular desserts from a wholesale baker and now these great vegan gluten-free desserts, and she's got her own spot.
Okay, awesome. Well, Tanya, thank you so much for all your knowledge, your professionalism, and your good eats that you always offer.
My pleasure. I appreciate you giving me as a caterer a voice. I hope people will, make their decisions wisely when you choose a caterer, read those reviews, and let the professionals do their job.
100% agree with that. So, all right. Well, everybody, that you've been listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. On my guest, I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your host, and my guest today was Tanya Gurrieri from Salthouse Catering in Charleston, South Carolina. So make sure you check her out if you're going to Charleston. You can check this podcast out on all podcast platforms, Eating at a Meeting. And we're here every Wednesday doing a live interview with a food and beverage expert. Until next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks, Tanya. Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.